he told me, he said, pick up all the keys you can. And I said, well, tell me, what does that mean? And he said, well, keys can be anything. He said it could be reading a book, it could be getting a degree, it could be meeting a new person, taking a class, starting a business. All of those, he said, just pick up as many keys as you can throughout your young life, because he said if you come upon a door and that door is locked and you passed up picking up that key, you only have yourself to blame.
If you're looking to leave the 9-to-5 and elevate your side hustle, the Hustle the Day podcast is the podcast for you. Your host, Trent Bray, left the 9-to-5 grind behind and is helping others do the same and focus on the future. Hear from others who have done it and how they did it. Jump in as we talk entrepreneurship, mindset, and strategy. Just take it one day at a time and hustle the day.
On this episode of the Hustle the Day podcast, I am fortunate to have my friend Jason Woodland on the show. Jason is a very interesting individual with lots of fascinating stories dating back to being a graffiti artist, to network marketing, to serving the community, most recently through life insurance, and he has amazing stories along the way. You're going to want to check this one out. Love his mindset. Let's get into it. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Hustle the Day podcast. My name is Trent. Super excited to have my good friend Jason Woodland here today. Jason, why don't you jump in, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Hey, what's happening, Trent? Thank you very much for having me on your show. It's a real pleasure. It was fun having you on my show, so it was fun to play this back and forth and being able to speak with you a little bit further. So a little bit about myself. I'd say I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a reader. I'm a meditator. I love getting involved in learning about financial markets and business. And my current business is a life insurance brokerage firm, which I'm phenomenally passionate about. But most of all, I love helping people, regardless of whether it's with my business specifically or connecting them with other people within the community. And love being involved in philanthropic work and just community efforts in general. And that's in a nutshell.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the interesting thing is you talked about the community aspect, and that is something that I have known you for, is being somebody who connects people, and it seems to be reciprocated tremendously back to you. So can you tell me a little bit about your efforts to build a community and connect individuals to each other?
Yeah, absolutely. So my take on the concept of building community and making friends and that kind of stuff is literally all about being of service. I think that's absolutely imperative. And I think sometimes people miss that boat when they get involved in, whether it be networking or, whatever they're trying to do to build business, is I think that sometimes people do this, is they'll do something with the hope of something coming back. And I know that, I feel like one of the many reasons why we're friends is because we both have that mentality of give with zero expectation. If something comes back, that's all fine and dandy. And if it doesn't, that's fine too. Because it's about being of service to the community and helping other people achieve what they're trying to achieve as well.
No, I definitely agree that you do have to give without expectation to really get those things to come back to you. Because if you give with expectation, when you don't get something that you perceive as right back, you're going to be burned by it, and you're not going to want to keep giving because you didn't get the expected return.
Right, exactly. And I think that, pouring into the idea of entrepreneurship all to begin with is all about being of service. That's my initial take. I got involved in the whole idea of entrepreneurship really out of necessity when I was a kid. My parents, both absolutely amazing people, both very talented, both struggled pretty severely with alcoholism. They were divorced at age 6, and it was just my mother and my sister and I for a bit of time. We were sort of like the three musketeers, so to speak. And there was a few periods of time where she was suffering pretty severely along those lines, and there was periods of time here and there that she was out of work, and that sort of forced my hand to just sort of get out in the world and try to figure things out. And some of those things were not the best things. I stole a few hubcaps in my younger days, and to go get some SpaghettiOs and that kind of stuff over the store. But that's it. So, like I said, it was out of necessity, and growing up around that type of environment. And of course, thankfully, overall, my mom, ended up getting away from that. She did ultimately pass away from falling back into some of those types of habits. But either way, she was a phenomenal inspiration to me. Like I said, it was just periods of time when she was suffering along those lines. But when she wasn't, like I said, she was an unbelievable force in this world. In fact, her force still lives. She was a singer. She had her own record. She was a spokeswoman for Fort Worth National Bank. She really made a very heavy dent in this world, and I'm forever thankful for that. But growing up around that time, when we had to put my mother into a live-in Alcoholics Anonymous program, that I was in the 5th grade. My sister and I were sent to live with my grandfather and my grandmother, who were pretty strict overall. My grandfather was a former vice president of Conoco Oil out of Dallas, Fort Worth, and he was a strictly business type of character. And I'm saying strictly business. In fact, I think, to my knowledge, I was one of the first people like he had actually hugged and said, "I love you too." My mom was even dumbfounded. She's like, "Whoa, I don't know if I've ever heard him say that." But anyway, when we were living there, he was having me anyway read college level books. And keep in mind, I was in 5th grade, and I'd be like, "I don't even know all these words." And he said, "Well, that's what the dictionary's for." So I'd have this book open, and I'd have the dictionary sitting right next to it. And how that worked when we'd come home from school, he'd make me memorize 3 words out of the dictionary every single day, and their exact definition, and if they were a verb, adjective, noun, etc. And then do my homework, and then I could go out and play. But then when I got back in, it was bath time, and then it was reading time. And like I said, reading, pretty intense books, and that's what led me to my absolute love of reading today. But anyway, I'd say that was a lot of my foundation in the concept of entrepreneurship, but not just entrepreneurship, but in terms of just being an independent thinker and being a critical thinker, because there was obviously a lot of things to navigate in my young days along those lines. And, living with them, and then ultimately moving back in with our mother and being able to grow and build and sort of create that's where my mindset is that the idea of business ownership or entrepreneurship, or whether even if you work for others, it's about building, and it's about creating, and it's about building sort of a cohesive team, regardless of whether you're on your own or with others. So I thought I'd share that out there just to sort of show you what some of that foundational aspect of that was.
Anyway, as you're talking, I can see the onion being peeled back, and I understand Jason a little bit more, having known you a little bit, because we can talk about this because the statute of limitations has expired. But really, if you think about it, the hubcaps situation, that was really where entrepreneurship started. You got a product low and you sold it high, right?
Yeah, exactly. And living with my grandparents, there was something that my grandfather taught me at a young age that has stuck with me on a really dramatic scale ever since. And that was, he told me, he said, "Pick up all the keys you can." And I said, "Well, tell me, what does that mean?" And he said, "Well, keys can be anything." He said it could be reading a book, it could be getting a degree, it could be meeting a new person, taking a class, starting a business. All of those, he said, just pick up as many keys as you can throughout your young life. Well, throughout life in general, but really in your young life, because he said if you come upon a door and that door is locked and you passed up picking up that key, you only have yourself to blame. And although it sort of clicked, of course, I was in 5th grade. He talked to me like I was 30. But although I was in 5th grade, I got it. But as I got older, I got it even more. And so that's when I'm like, okay, I went back to college and got a couple of degrees and have taken, I don't even know how many classes, and read thousands of books. And it's because I'm passionate. I look at it this way, really, not just from the perspective of if I personally come upon a door that's locked, but suppose I could pick up one of those keys, so to speak, and share that piece of knowledge with someone else. So when they come upon that door that's locked, they can maybe remember a lesson, hopefully, that I was able to share with them at some point and help them get through that door.
That is awesome. I wish I would have learned that at a young age. I spent a lot of my 20s avoiding the keys, and so that would have been tremendously helpful, in my current state, because I want to help other people, and the keys are really the way to do that.
Yeah, they are, definitely. And, and I want to make sure that I emphasize this, that my mother was one that taught me the most. And although there were certain periods of time where there was sort of disconnections, so to speak, she's still absolutely unbelievable. She taught me a magnificent amount of lessons. She taught me also about critical thinking and asking questions and being of service to the community. And I just want to make sure that I'm giving her magnificent amounts of credit, because even though, like I said, there were certain periods of time where there was disconnections there, she was absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, I definitely can see the other side that you bring. You're not firmly planted in business. It's not all business. I mean, I can definitely see the other side that you did get, from your mother. And, I think that led you to some more creative outlets. And, one of those happened to be being a graffiti artist. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, growing up in the situation that I did, in that, with my mother going through some of those trials that she was a wildly talented and creative person. She was an artist. She was a singer. She was a model. She was a voiceover artist. She was all these things. And with that, my father also was a drummer. And I think that there was a level of sort of art that bled over to me. And what I found with art when I was young, because when you're young, I think there's already a level of angstiness that comes along with being an early teen and that kind of stuff all to begin with. But seeing the things that I had seen growing up, because I'm only sharing, 5% of the experiences that I went through. With that, I wanted to find artwork that was in your face. And of course, yes, I am an A-type personality and an ENTJ and Myers-Briggs. I think it's Myers-Briggs. Anyway, whatever those things are. So I felt that graffiti was my way to express in an in-your-face kind of manner. Take, whether it's good or bad, that's a whole different conversation to be debated. But I did. I was a graffiti artist for a decent portion of my teen years, and I still hold there's my heart part of my heart still is there, and I'm still extremely dear friends with people who are still within that world, and I'm thankful for those friendships, because we have seen a lot throughout the last, holy moly, time flies, 25, 28 years, 30 years, whatever that looks like now.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? The funny thing is that has really become a legitimate business now, is the graffiti artist style, painting the inside of warehouses or even outside walls of businesses. Like that type of artistry has been recognized now.
Yeah.
As a legitimate form of art. And so it's interesting to see how that came full circle. So if that's something you want to get back into and life insurance doesn't work out, it sounds like you've got an option there.
Well, thankfully, life insurance is working out great. But no, if anybody watching this interview needs something painted, definitely reach out. I can put you in touch with some wonderfully talented people who are very dear friends of mine. So
That's awesome.
yeah, there's a lot of lessons learned there. I'll tell you that, though. It's something that like I said, I hold near and dear to my heart. That was a wonderful period of growth and creativeness, and a creative outlet that was really, to a large extent, unmatched by anything that I feel that I could have found at that point. I could have done, watercolors. I could have done, but that didn't speak to me. It needed to be more of a loud type of venue, so to speak.
Yeah, that'll definitely do it.
It did.
So you talked about, getting into entrepreneurship out of necessity, helping, support all the transitions your family was going through. Where did you lead from, hubcaps to graffiti artists? Where did you go from there?
So it went through it had done a lot of different types of businesses. And those were part of the sort of keys that I utilized, that my grandfather taught me about, learning about businesses firsthand. So instead of just reading about the business and overanalyzing it, I would try to learn about something along those lines and then just jump right into it. So a dear friend of mine and myself many, many, many years ago had a window cleaning business. We knew nothing about the window cleaning business. Nothing. We didn't have the right tools. I think we were in our late teens. We're tearing screens apart, breaking things. We didn't know what the heck was going on, but it was a trial by fire. And we did a handful of jobs for free because we did things wrong. But anyway, we'd done that. I've had vending machine businesses, drapery cleaning businesses with another couple of dear friends. That was in the ultra early 2000s. I've done a lot of really fun things. I worked over at a place called the Chalk Garden, which was a high-end clothing store for both men and women. And we had also a department there that was antique jewelry. So I was able to spend a few years really getting a deep understanding of the antique jewelry business. Also fine clothing. We were selling Giorgio Armani suits and those kind of fun things. So spent some time there, and then transitioned around that time. It was actually around the time my mother died. That was January 1st of 1998. My worst nightmare come true. She died in my arms at 11:48 that night. It was around that time I became a plumber. So working 7 days a week. Because around that time I was just trying to figure out what to do for my sister and I. And so worked 7 days a week, did plumbing 45 of those hours, and then the rest of the time was selling fine clothing. So literally during the day was really nasty work. And then I'd race home and change into a suit and cruise back down to Trolley Square and do that work until 9:30 at night or so, and did that 7 days a week for quite some time. And honestly, I loved it. I mean, it was grueling, the hours and so forth, but it was amazing. It was an amazing period of time, an emotional period of time, of course, losing my mother, but it was an amazing growth period. From there, a very, very dear friend, Tony Reese, reached out to me and said, "Hey, Jason, there's this network marketing business called USANA, and I want you to get involved." And I said, "Okay, cool, let's do it." Because, that's sort of what you do. And especially, in your early 20s, you're just like, hey, let's try all the things. Because actually right before that, in the late 90s, what I used to do is go around to the different restaurants where I thought stockbrokers hung out at. And so like Lamb's Cafe downtown and some of those places, and I'd sit there with a notepad and I'd just say, "Hey, sit me next to all the ladies and gentlemen in suits." And so they would, and I'd just sit there and I'd take notes. I'd listen to them talking about investments and investment strategies. And so I'd write down the vocabulary words they were using. I would just get a deep understanding of the world of investments at that time, because of course the internet at that period of time was, it was still, of course, being built. So it was sort of half baked. So I would learn about that stuff, and then I'd come home and I'd call my stockbroker, which at that time cost $40 a trade. So yeah, if you bought a share of stock, it was $40, and if you sold it, it was $40. So it was expensive to do stock trading at that point. But anyway, it was around that time I bought this stock for I think it was 71 cents. Bought 1,000 shares of it, so it was like $700 or so. And I rode it for about 2.5 years, and rode it up to $25 a share. And so I turned that $700 into $25,000 and sold my position, and then just did other things. And, some things won, and some things I got my throat slit. And that's what I call street university. But it was around that time that, like I said, Tony reached out and said, hey, let's join this thing. And so anyway, we had some fun. We sold vitamins, and we were able to go full time in a matter of about 4 months. And then a couple of the Diamond directors said, hey, we want your team to go out to Hong Kong and launch Hong Kong with us. And so, of course, Tony and I were like, let's do it. Because, why not? Let's move to Hong Kong and launch a business. And, I was 22 years old. And so the initial idea was to move to Hong Kong. Well, go to Hong Kong for a week. I'm like, okay, I'll go for a week. And very, very quickly realized before we even left that a week is a total waste of time, because Hong Kong, the way of doing business out there in the Far East, is dramatically different than here. And so, so before I left, I had already stretched it to 2 weeks. And I'm getting nervous. I'm 22 years old. I've got a plumbing job, which I was thankful for. And, I did well with it. I had a townhouse that I'd bought when I was 20 or 21 years old. And so I had a girlfriend at the time living there, and my sister, and bless their hearts, they were able to hold down the fort while I went out there to tackle the world. I'm 22. I thought, man, I'm gonna crush Hong Kong. I said that I'm gonna crush Hong Kong. I'm gonna go out there, man. I've got it all figured out. You don't have anything figured out when you're 22 years old, and you sure as heck don't have anything figured out launching a business internationally. And so I moved out there, and within about 5 days, I realized 2 weeks' time was a pipe dream. So right at that time, I pushed it to a month. And then within a few weeks, realizing that, business in the Far East, again, it takes a lot of time and a lot of relationship building. And so that period of time elongated to a couple months and then a few months. And I don't remember exactly, but I think it ended up being around the 4-month time frame that I stayed out there. And I had some very dear friends join out there, like Tony Reese and Joey Peck and Derek Halls and some other just wonderful people that were able to go out there and help build business. And then came back to America, and came back as a changed person. I had my 23rd birthday out there on the beach of the South China Sea with a couple of clients who became ultra dear friends. And we just threw rocks into the dark abyss of the South China Sea, and that's how I spent my 23rd birthday. And then, came back and, like I said, was able to implement a lot of the lessons of growth, which were dramatic, to say the least, because it was straight up trial by fire. After a month of being, I think it was maybe after a few weeks of being out there, I did some classes at the City University of Hong Kong just by myself. I actually just peeled off from the group and just went to try to learn, and ended up with a certificate in international marketing, because that's what happened. You just end up with a certificate. So that was an extremely good learning experience. So yeah, I mean, I've been talking for a bit now. Thanks for the platform, but that's just sort of in a nutshell of a few things that I got involved with. And then I'll share this piece really quick. So I had tea at a tea house in, I wouldn't call it a jungle per se, but it felt like it to me, especially when I was 22. But it was on Lantau Island. We were going to hike across Lantau Island, and so had tea out there. But I went into this Buddhist monastery, and I said, "Well, I'm going to go in there and hang out with the monks." And the other American I was with said, "You can't just go in there and hang out with the monks." But of course, when you're 22, you think, oh, you just do anything. And so I walked into this monastery, and there was about 20 or 30 gentlemen who were monks. And I said, hey, like, what's up? And one of them came over and they said, can I help you? And I said, yeah, I just wanted to say hi and meet you guys and, whatever. And they said, well, you're more than welcome to, have some tea with us, and then we can meditate together. And I'm like, let's do this. And so that was the beginning of my experience of meditation. And it was my first experience with tea on the traditional sense. Fast forward that a little bit, ended up starting a tea business with a very dear friend, MC. But at that time, I had dislocated from the world of tea completely. I only had that experience. And then he said, hey, let's do this tea business. And I said, let's do a tea business. So we did that. So ultimately sold my shares in that business and started in the life insurance realm. But, and then had a lot of experiences in between that, spent 7 years working with and consulting businesses about fundraising. Had worked with probably 10,000 businesses all around the country, everything from Domino's Pizza franchises to Harley Davidson dealerships, doctors, dentists, and everything in between, helping them figure out their personal and their business credit, their business plans, their entity formations, and how they could connect the dots on getting funding, whether it be through a debt institution, so like SBA loans and business credit cards and that kind of stuff, or whether we send them over to our equity department for angel investors or possible venture capital.
Wow, incredible that whole that whole story there of all that you went through. First and foremost, I empathize with you and your mom. That is never fun for anyone to have to experience that. Glad that you were willing to share that and to where you went from there, because it's obviously something that is still a part of you and still rooted in how you're doing things nowadays. But I'm getting a recurring theme here of let's just jump into this. It seems to be your attitude, and everything is, well, let's just jump into it. And you mentioned also people who sit there and overanalyze. And I think we all get in the paralysis of analysis and overthink things and then just never take those actions. Is that something that you've always had, is where it's just, hey, I'll just jump into it? Or is that a learned behavior?
It's a bit of both. And I do think that there is a good level of learning when it comes to taking levels of action, because it's easy to overanalyze. Nobody's perfect. Nobody can just automatically, well, there's some people that can just automatically jump in without even really thinking about it. I do consider myself, a risk manager. So I'll look at things, but I'll take a look at it and say, okay, well, what's the worst possible case scenario in this situation? If the worst possible case scenario is death, then I triple down on the amount of thought I put into it. Or if it's going to physically maim, or become a problem for, me or someone else along those lines. Because, I really am big on the oath in the medical industry of do no harm. So, I don't want to harm anybody else. And so I'll take a look at some of those things. Can it kill? Can it harm? And if the answer is absolutely not, then of course the decision-making processes, so to speak, can drop significantly. Can it harm financially? Well, anything and everything can potentially harm financially. My main objective, I look at it as my 85 rule. I say, if when I'm 85 years old, I look back at my life, am I going to heavily regret not doing this thing? Then I do it. And if I'm 85 and I look back and I just don't care if I did this thing or not, then no big deal. But the thing is that there's going to be some things that work, and there's going to be some things that don't, and there's going to be some things that work really well, and there's going to be some things that straight up punch in your throat. And the catch is we need all of those to be a well-rounded individual. You can't always be on a winning streak, period. because if you are, those falls are going to be much more dramatic and severe. You have to have, like I mentioned, street university is absolutely imperative. You have to get your butt kicked. And some of those butt kickings are going to be pretty severe, and you have to have them. They're tough. They suck to go through, but they're absolutely imperative for us to be able to, like I said, evolve as a people. So then we can look back and learn from our own mistakes and share those mistakes with others and say, hey, because I'll have a good handful of people come to me, and I'm very thankful to be able to provide some of this advice. And they might be trying to do something that I've done before, and maybe I wasn't successful at, or maybe I only succeeded to a certain level. I'm not the one that says, don't do it. I'll never be that person. Oh, don't do it. It didn't work for me. I won't say that. I'll say, here's what did work for me in this experience, and here's what didn't work for me in this experience. So then they can take both those wins and those losses and navigate that experience on their own.
Wow. Yeah. I've noticed that when I've brought up conversations with you, you do present of here's the good, here's the bad, now make your own decision. And I think people respect that because you're giving them well-informed advice.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that's important, because the thing is, just because there might have been something I've done in my past that either didn't work, or I didn't spend the proper time, or I didn't have the proper education for something, doesn't mean it's not going to work for someone else. So I think that's important to have those types of conversations with people, because the thing is, you might not have had even the passion for a particular thing. Someone else might, and that passion could drive them to huge greatness.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I want to dig into a little bit is your, the business funding side of things, where you were involved in that. A lot of people think they need the funding, and I feel like a lot of people can benefit from bootstrapping. Were there any times that you directed them away from funding? Obviously, you being in the business, it might skew your perspective a little bit.
Yeah, without a doubt, because the thing is, So my colleagues and I, our titles at that point were senior credit analysts, and our jobs were to literally pick a business apart. We were there to take a look at all of the personal credit, all of the business credit, take a look if they had business plans, if they had an entity, what kind of entity was it? What is it? Was it a S Corp, C Corp? Was it a LLC? Was it a sole proprietorship? Take a look at their financial pro formas. And take a look at what they were doing within their business. And I mean, we'd spend a bit of time with them on the phone, because like I said, we worked from coast to coast, every single state in the country. And our jobs were to literally pick apart and say, okay, you say you need X amount. First of all, why? What do you need this money for? And help them connect the dots on it. Because what I did find on a handful of occasions is that people were asking for a lot more than they needed. And in a lot of cases, they were asking for a lot more than they could even qualify for. The other thing that we found a lot of is people asking for angel investors or venture capitalists in businesses that not only typically don't get that type of financing, but may not even, in essence, I wouldn't say deserve that kind of financing, because that might be sort of harsh sounding. But like, for instance, sometimes we'd have restaurants come in and they'd be like, yeah, I need venture capital. Well, there's maybe a few VC firms around the country that would, give to a restaurant. But for the most part, venture capitalists are not looking, to fund working capital for a restaurant. They're looking they're looking to make 10 investments, and they're expecting that probably 5 or 6 are going to die on the vine, and they're expecting that 1 or 2 are going to pop. And when I say pop, I'm talking 10x, 20x, or much higher than that, of course. And so that's what we were there to navigate, giving people proper advice and proper guidance on if your business was fundable at this point. If it was, set the proper expectations to the best of our ability. and move them in that direction. If the business was fundable, but maybe there was holes in the business, our jobs were to point those things out and say, you know what, you're probably a candidate for financing. But here's the problems within your overall business and profile that we need to button up before we even waste anybody's time trying to move you forward. And then the third type of business was a total pipe dream. You're not getting funding from anybody. Nobody's even going to lend you $5 for lunch because it was just a problem across the board. And again, I'm not trying to sound judgmental or harsh, but when you're a credit analyst in that type of capacity, we would have been doing people an injustice saying, yeah, absolutely, you're going to get funding when there just wasn't a possibility. The business was not making money. Maybe there was extreme problems with credit. Maybe there were stacks of maybe there was possible lawsuits, or there was tax problems. There's a myriad of things. There was no easy answer on, can I get funding? There was no yes or no, because even with a good profile, they still might not get funding because of some other unique situation that, our job was to try and dig into and find what that was.
There are a lot of those pipe dreams out there. People get married to the idea and jump into the idea. Like you were jumping into a lot of these things, but like you said, your process for analyzing it was completely different than the way most people probably look into those things.
Yeah, I think that there is a level of analyzing that took place even with my experience as an analyst beforehand. But the catch is, and this is where you have to stay humble, because no matter what level of education you have, no matter how many books you've read, no matter how many different jobs or businesses you've had in the past, there's guaranteed to be either someone bigger, badder, faster, smarter, etc. But there's also guaranteed to be a situation that you've never seen before, that you've never read about, and you didn't learn in school, and that your friends can't teach you about who have been in business also. It's guaranteed there's going to be those situations. And I think the business that I was in, the tea business, that was one of those situations. It was a wonderful business. We had an astronomical amount of fun. We had it as an online business and sold around the country. We did wholesale to coffee shops and restaurants. And then we started a store. And we had a cute little tea house over on 45th South and right off 900 East. And I'll tell you something, like running a wholesale and online business, and then running a tea, like an actual brick and mortar, diametrically different. I mean, I'm talking diametrically
Absolutely.
different. And to a certain extent, they were compatible. And there's other things that were totally incompatible. And here's one of the examples of the incompatibleness, if that's a word, of those two types of business models. Come November, our coffee shops and restaurants, their usage of tea went up. Understandably so. You're going into the fall. People love tea in the fall, right? Well, if you didn't have proper inventory, not only here, but also within your brick and mortar, now you have inventory problems for your wholesale business. And so those were things that I didn't step into it saying, okay, well, we're going to have to make sure that we're properly inventoried, not only for the online business, but also for the store, but then also for your wholesale business, which is a separate business segment. So there's a lot of things that you had to really learn trial by fire. And it was a phenomenal growing experience. And of course, having a brick and mortar it's fun. It's both. It's fun because your friends and your family can drop by and have tea and hang out, and it's there's something sort of sexy about having a brick and mortar place. Like, hey, this is our place. Come and see us at our place. It's fun. The things that aren't fun are the things that wake you up in a cold sweat on Saturday night at 2:30 in the morning. Oh my gosh, I forgot this, or I didn't do this, or how am I going to connect the dots next week? All that kind of stuff. But the thing is that I'm huge on trench experience. I call it trench experience. And that means I've been there, I've done that. I didn't just read about it. I didn't just get a college degree in it. I didn't just talk to a friend about it. I'm huge on the position of saying, if you're going to take advice, make sure you've taken it from someone who's been there and done that or is doing it. Because there is a level of understanding when you've been there, done that, or doing it, which is diametrically different from someone who has just looked at it as a third party looking in. And part of that is the mental and emotional side of that growth, which is dramatic, and in certain circumstances, it is severe, which means that those learning opportunities are baked in for life, whether you want it to or not, because you've been there on the front lines, you've sat in the trenches, and you've had to figure those things out firsthand.
Well, you mentioned, the emotional aspect, and that really can weigh on you, versus reading a book. I mean, you can read about, say, war, but if you haven't been in the trenches, like you said, with, things being lobbed at you, and you have, all those emotions running through you, you really don't know what it's like. And
exactly.
So I definitely understand, you've got to be able to take advice from those that have been in the trenches. And, you've kind of become a super connector of those people within the trench. You're sitting on the Chamber of Commerce. You host a mastermind each month, which is actually how we connected. And, you seem to be everywhere and every place whenever life insurance gets brought up here in the local community. So
thank you.
You've definitely been picking up those keys along the way.
When it comes to connecting, like I said, it's all about being of service to the community. I'm huge on the idea that of raising everybody's ship, so to speak, because being on the beach by yourself sucks, right? You want to have people succeed. And honestly, one of my biggest things, one of the things that makes me happiest is when I see others succeed. And if I'm able to connect them with somebody that helped them succeed, or if I was able to give them a tidbit or a book idea or connect them, whatever that looks like, I love that the most. And I think that, that's the reason why I'm involved with the Chamber of Commerce. That's why I'm involved with some of the other board of directors that I'm involved with, is because I want to see people succeed. I want to see people happy. I want to see them healthy. Having people go backwards, it isn't good for anybody. And so if we can be that person to share a word of optimism, a word of hope, a word of proper advisement, that kind of stuff, I think that ranks out everything else. That's just my personal position about that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I've definitely seen that in you, and appreciate that you have this attitude of, raising all the ships. And one ship that we've seen kind of take off is something that you're pretty well versed in, something that you're very knowledgeable in that you wrote a book about it, no less a children's book about it. Tell me a little bit about the blockchain and cryptocurrency and some of the things you're doing with that.
So early on, actually, back when I was in the business finance space, because I felt like part of my duty and job was to learn about all the things, all the things that connect into the financial world on some sense or another. And now that was called Bitcoin. And I started reading about it in 2010 and 2011. I didn't do anything about it. I just read about it, because at that point it was still a nascent technology. It was very foggy. It was just all over the place. And had just sort of tracked on that for a while, and just wanting to learn a little bit more of the details about a concept of a decentralized financial tool. And decentralized, just to touch on that, means that it's not controlled by any central entity. whether it be a government or a central bank or a corporation, et cetera. And I started going to a couple of the local meetups back in 16 and 17. A friend of mine, Will Bound, who is a blockchain developer and just brilliant when it comes to this kind of stuff, he actually started coming to my tea house back in 2014. And he'd come down there, and a couple of people would go back into the back and they'd talk about mining Bitcoin. So I'd put together their tea and go back and talk to them a little bit about mining and so forth. And I just got more and more and more interested. And honestly, it took a while for it to really click on the importance of the why. So I tend to explain to people that there's two types of people that think about Bitcoin. Well, there's a lot of people that think about Bitcoin, but there's two types that I think understand it on a more granular basis, but one of them on a dramatically deeper scale than the other. One is there's the type of person that believes that there's a probability that the price will go up. So they buy in hopes to sell at a higher price. The other type of person I think is catching on to be a much larger part of the ecosystem, but it's the person that really understands the why of Bitcoin and the importance of Bitcoin, not from the perspective of the price going up, but from the perspective of having a decentralized monetary system and what it looks like for the future of humanity. At this point in time, Bitcoin is not a medium of exchange. It's not really trying to be that anyway at this moment in time. In essence, it's a competitor with gold. And the reason why I say it's a competitor with gold is because gold is a store of value. And that's really what Bitcoin is doing at this point in time, is becoming a digital store of value. So I do see it sort of siphoning some of the market capitalization from gold over to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is, I respect gold for what gold is as a store of value. And of course, we've understood gold for thousands of years. We've understood Bitcoin. Well, let's say we've known about Bitcoin for 12, and we're just barely scratching the surface on the understanding of why Bitcoin exists. I did write a children's book about Bitcoin and blockchain technology with two very good friends. And the reason why we did that, one day I like to talk to my nieces about, business and, money and that kind of stuff, because I think it's important to teach the youth about how that stuff works. And one day I said, gosh, I want to write a children's book about this. One of the most advanced, complicated pieces of technology that most adults can't even dream of wrapping their head around. I'm like, that'll be a challenge. I said, so who do I know that has done it? Linda Rawson. She's written a couple of books and she's got a children's book. So I said, Linda, I give her a call. What's up? Well, give her a call, because this is how people that actually had like old school phones. You know what I mean? Like now, if you ask a millennial how you pick up the phone, they say they do it like this. So sort of funny. So anyway, so Linda, so I said, hey, do you want to team up with me and write a children's book about Bitcoin? And her and I have similar types of personalities. She said, yes. I'm like, all right, let's do this. So we did that. And then I cruised down to the World Crypto Convention down in Las Vegas back in 18, I guess it was. And I went down with one copy, because that's all we had. And it even had the banner around the front that said, not for sale. And my objective was to just walk everywhere the entire time with the book in my hand and talk to people. And when I'd walk up to a table, I'd put the book on the table, and I wouldn't even say anything about it. People were like, what's that? Oh, funny that you should ask. And ended up getting interviewed. I think it was 3 or 4 different podcasts and blogs about the book. And then also had a few orders placed of the book before I even left. And it was funny because I had someone come up and they said, hey, I need to order, 250 of those books from you. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I'm going to have to do an order because I don't have any. They're like, I'm seeing your book everywhere, though. Everybody's got a copy of it. Well, it's because I walked everywhere the whole time and talked to everybody I could. And so the book looked like it was everywhere. It was hilarious.
That is awesome. I love that story. And, you've talked, about some using similar strategies with Hustle Energy, knowing the story behind that and how it worked well to your advantage. Just so we can make sure to give it a plug. It's the book is available on Amazon.
Toshi to the Moon.
Toshi to the Moon. A great book. I've bought it. I've read it. I've tried to help my children understand it. They're still fairly young, but I was trying to explain, the blockchain and Bitcoin and all this to some other people the other day. I didn't think to bring out your book. I probably should have. That would have put it on the right level of an introduction. Hey, this is how it works.
Yeah, really. Yeah. And shout out to my other business partner, Tim Rowberry, on that. And the illustrator is Tim's brother, Ben Rowberry. These guys are just awesome people and very talented. So
I don't want to take too much of your time, but you mentioned it right at the top of the recording, but I want to make sure we give some proper time to your podcast and, your YouTube channel as well.
Yeah. So the podcast itself is called Always the Journey and can be found at alwaysthejourney.com. I haven't done a lot of the actual podcasts themselves for a while, but Monique Higginson, which is just a force of energy and power in this state of Utah. She's amazing. She was the last interview that I did on there. But about 3 months ago, anyway, I said, gosh, what I wanted to do is create a hybrid of that podcast and do a video, a vlog, sort of like what you've got going on here, and talk to people within the community, ultra specifically about their business. And I sort of looked at that as a community service, so to speak, trying to get more eyeballs on people's businesses and try to, connect the dots and let people know within my community about new people. And you were the number one interview. So congrats on that. That was a lot of fun.
Should clarify, first interview, not the number one interview.
Oh man, to me, you're always number one.
Well, I appreciate that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, so that one it just shows up on YouTube under my name, Jason Woodland. At some point when I really have some time to dedicate to figuring out YouTube, I'll see if I can transition that and whatever. But it's been a good time. That was one of those things where I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this thing, and so I just start interviewing, doing this thing, and I've learned a lot. I think I've got 39 interviews out right now, and yeah, I'm a trial by fire kind of character. Yes, I love learning from other people's experiences, mistakes. That's important. And that's why I read as much as I do. But doing is where you learn the most because you're forced to learn. So yeah, I appreciate the plug. Always the journey.
So Jason, like I mentioned, I don't want to take too much of your time. I really appreciate everything that you've provided here so far. So before I give you a chance to plug where people can best find you, I want to ask you one final question, personal or business. What is it that excites you about the future?
Future always excites me because I'm an eternal optimist. I believe that there's going to be a lot of really great things that come out of this experience we've just gone through with 2020. I think that to a large extent, it's made us stronger as a people. So I'm extremely optimistic about the future of growth that I think that we can see both from a civic level and an economic level. And I think that there's been a lot of wonderful lessons that have come out of 2020. And my hope is that we can come out of this as a more empathetic, is that the word, empathetic? Yeah. People filled with empathy, thinking about what can we do to put ourselves in other people's shoes and to sort of walk a mile in their shoes, so to speak, and to help one another and to build and create sustainably build amazing things, and to help others figure out what they need to do to find their passions and build and just take action. And I think that we've got a lot of work ahead of us, without a doubt. And I'm full force. I'm all chips in on what do we need to do, and let's work on the big things. I think that's the biggest thing, is that we need to really focus on what the big things are and tackle those. So hopefully that answers your question.
I absolutely love that. I do believe we really need to lean into the empathy and understand where people are coming from, because right now it's a lot of, they don't see it my way, so they're wrong. And that is not the way that we're going to learn and grow as a people. And so I love that you're all in on that. That really is a viable path forward. I want to make sure that people can connect with you. Where is the best way to do that?
They can connect with me virtually all social media platforms. So I am on Facebook, Jason Woodland. I am on Instagram, Jason Woodland with the number 1 directly after it. Same thing with Twitter, at Jason Woodland with the number 1 directly after it. And then LinkedIn. I spend, as far as social media goes, probably the bulk is going to be found on Instagram and Twitter. Love those platforms. Lots of good stuff there and fun stuff to learn. So yeah, hit me up, say what's up.
Perfect.
I definitely appreciate you having me on your show today. Shout out to all my friends and community and family. I stand on the shoulder of giants, straight up. I can take the action. I can take the, read the books. I can do the things. But I'm not the kind of person that says dues are paid and that's done. I'm a dues paid every single day type of character. I think that there's lessons every day, and that's what keeps that's what keeps me humble, because I know that anything can change. I'm ultra thankful to people throughout my entire life, friends and family and relationships. I take none of them for granted. Every single one of them I hold near and dear to my heart, because there was lessons learned there. And I thank them for the building blocks of the person I am today.
I'll make sure to include links in the description so people can find you a little bit easier. Just click on that link. But thank you, Jason, for taking time out of your day. I know I've gotten a ton of value out of this, so I know my audience has gotten value out of this. So I encourage you all to get out there and hustle the day. Hey, everybody, thank you for watching this video all the way through here on YouTube. One thing that would help us out tremendously to share this value with more people is if you subscribe to the channel, like the video, make a comment, share it with others, click that bell notification to say, hey, I want to see more videos like this. That would tremendously help us out, and I would sincerely appreciate if you did that. Thank you again for watching this video.